Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. Hi again.
Hi.
Yeah, I still don't have anything interesting to report, but then I edited the episode just last night that comes out. What will not be this week when this airs, but 2 weeks before this airs. And it was the last big thing that I had, a big story about going to the burlesque and the other show.
Yes.
And I was like, yep, I don't have anything that interesting to report.
I don't think I've ever in my life had anything that interesting to report.
I am. We're going to hopefully, since we're going to have a spare child for a while in August. Mm-hmm. And then after said child goes back and my son goes on another road trip and all of that, then my husband and I are going to go out for like a late anniversary.
Nice.
Maybe we're thinking either Frisco, Colorado or Telluride.
Ooh.
I want to go to a little mountain town and check it out, basically is the gist of it.
Yeah.
And not a ski resort town.
That sounds like fun. Although I like ski resort towns in the summer.
I don't, because it's still full of fucking douche canoes.
And I should say it's been, 20, 30 years since I've been to one.
Yeah, we went to Breckenridge. I think it was last year. I think it's only been a year. I don't know. Time travels differently now. And it was just full of awful people.
Yeah.
And Steamboat Springs was the same way when we went to that for our anniversary. So I'm trying to find a mountain town that isn't full of awful people. But when we were in Breckenridge, somebody had said, I think you'll like Frisco. And I was like, fuck it. We're going, the last day we were there, I said, let's go have breakfast in Frisco. Right? And we did. And that's when I discovered that in the summer they closed those streets for that main little shopping area. Mm-hmm. So cars can't drive through. And it was just for people. And Breckenridge, they were trying to run you down. In Steamboat Springs, they were trying to run. They were defying the laws. If you were in a crosswalk and had the light to go, it didn't matter. They were going to try and drive over you. I had to hit a car that almost hit my daughter. Turned around and slammed my hand into their window. And the lady was like, I was the one who was in the wrong when she tried to run over my teenage daughter.
No.
I hated it.
No.
And it's sad because Steamboat Springs is a really neat town. And it's terrible that you can't go there without dealing with sucky people. But also they hate tourists there.
What's the one, the springs, the big hot springs that everybody goes to? Glenwood. Oh, I do not like Glenwood Springs.
That's what I keep hearing. And since now that I've had the experiences at Breckenridge and Steamboat, that people said Steamboat was great. And it was that experience. I'm pretty sure Glenwood Springs would be terrible.
Glenwood they have a very pretty little downtown. But if you are there, they want you to stay in that pretty little downtown. Yeah. They don't want you to go beyond it. And they did have that mountain, like amusement park. Amusement park isn't quite the right. They have the Alpine coaster and you could go down and do the tour in the caves and the big swing out over the side of the mountain. That was fun, but we just did not like, oh my God, it was awful. It was just not a good vibe, but we had been going to Buny. Mm-hmm. To the hot springs in Mount Princeton for years. And we're used to Buny. And people are very laid back there. Yeah. Okay, you got a few douche canoes because they've got a little hipster part of town but for the most part, people are just really laid back. And so it was not a good transition for us.
Yeah, and I already talked about it probably on here after we went to Breck, but the people working there were great. Mm-hmm. It was the tourists that sucked, I think. It could have been the locals. Could have been both.
Yeah.
Because the people who work there, by and large, aren't locals. They can't afford to live there. There's been a whole thing there about that. But, yeah, so I'm going to go check out. And I don't know what Telluride is like in terms of the people that are there, but we'll see. But I also want to go to the big horror film festival that's there.
Oh,
so
when is that?
It's usually in, September, maybe. Huh. So I need to look. Because I had marked on the calendar when the tickets were available, and then I didn't go buy any. Because we're still trying to figure out when we can go to Mexico.
But you got your B. Dylan Hotless ticket.
I did. I actually don't care all that much about it. I just wanted to do something.
I was just like, ew, B. Dylan. And I'm like,
well, and we know people from Denver that are going to be there, so that'll be nice.
And I'm like, if we're going to Denver, we're going out to eat.
I was gonna see though, like, do we want to see if they want to go out afterwards and all that good stuff. So maybe.
So we could always go up and do like lunch somewhere and then meet people for coffee. Because you know how I feel about trying to organize a meal for 87 people. I can do it. I have done it. I no longer enjoy it. I'm like, you're all fuckwits by the end of it. And
yeah.
I have so much less. I'm not willing to spend my spoons on that anymore.
Correct.
I used to enjoy it. No longer.
I used to love having like giant barbecues and stuff like that. And we had one that was so big, Jeff had to go back to the store and get more food.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I think that one broke me. Because it was after that I was like, no more.
I was thinking, I used to like randomly throw like a ladies' night.
Yeah.
And just have, or like say, bring in wine or bring cheese and have a bunch of people over. I haven't done that in forever.
Mm-mm. It doesn't sound like fun to plan it.
I would like to hang out with the people, but I really don't want to clean my house. Although our bathroom is almost done.
How many weeks has it been?
A long time. I don't know.
Many weeks.
I mean, I can't fault the guy. He's doing good work.
You're about to start sending Civil War letters to people?
Yes.
The snow is ceaseless and my socks have holes in them. And
no, I said I was going to declare him on our taxes next year as a dependent. He did. But so he came and worked yesterday, which he hasn't worked a Saturday for us before. So the vanity is in and it's painted. The drawers are in. The countertop is on. The toilet's installed. The door has to go on the shower. What else has to happen? The sink. It would be nice to have the sink attached. So that needs to be. So he was like, okay, so if I do the vanity like this, the sink won't be centered. Mm-hmm. It wasn't centered the last time around either. And Joe and I are like, we don't give a fuck. We're like, it's new, it's nice, it's pretty. If it's not centered, that doesn't bother us. It just doesn't. It's got a nice, he didn't have in the downstairs bathroom, it did not have a medicine cabinet. So this is a big 3-door medicine cabinet. He could have drugs for days in there. I'm like, you're not even going to have enough stuff to fill it up. But that's okay.
I don't know. We always manage to fill anything that we think we won't fill around these parts.
That's true.
Yeah.
And went on this little cleaning spree yesterday, and I'm like, why do I have these? They don't mean anything to me. Wrap. Send them to Goodwill. I have tchotchkes and books, and I pick stuff up, and I'm like, no, I don't want this anymore. Get rid of it.
Why do I have this in the first place?
And although I had these little things, little tiny teapots that look like fruits and vegetables, I don't know why. I think I had one. And I kept the one that I originally had, and somebody saw them, and all of a sudden I started getting them, and was like, I did not ask for these. I did not. So I messaged the girls, and I said, these are going to Goodwill if you don't want them. I don't have any emotional attachment to them if you don't care. And Thing One did say she wanted one of them. Oh. The one that looks like an ear of corn. It's a ridiculous thing to collect, but she only wanted one, so I said, okay, I put it aside for you.
I don't know. I know a lot of people who just collect teacups in general or teapots, and like that's a common thing to collect.
And I have a lot of teacups. They're in a box, most of them.
I have like 3 sets of china that I don't need. I asked my sister, and she was like, I don't want them. I'm like, God damn it.
And everybody is writing about that, how people of a certain age, you got married and you got china. I was not one of those people.
I did not get china.
I got Corelware.
I'm practical. Shit.
But, people who had the china and it was passed down from their grandmother and now their kids don't want it. And I saw an interesting article just today, in fact, about how it's not so much that your kids don't want it, although they may honestly not want it, but your kids can't afford a house. And if they're renters, they don't have room for it, and they don't want to haul it to the next place they're renting. Yeah. You want to pass it to your grandchildren, but your children can't afford to have children, because of the price. And I was like, and they were like, if you want a community, you can't just slash and burn everything.
Yeah, I am both at the point where I'm like, I wish I had certain things that people who've lived in the same region for a long time have from their families passed down. But I wish I didn't have the things I had that were passed to me.
What do you wish you had?
Just like people are always like, oh, I went up to my attic because this house has been owned by my great-grandparents and my great-great-grandparents. And I found all this great paperwork that they had. And I found these photos and I had this. I like that I have a lot of the family photos because once it became known that I wanted those and would preserve them and put them in books and everything, then they got passed to me. But I'm like, a lot of people have heritage. I wasn't passed heritage. We don't have a heritage that was passed. We don't have like all the things that are like, this was our family. We always had this family gathering. And I'm like, we moved clear across the country and we couldn't afford to visit and be a part of that stuff. So then it's like this weird gap that some people take for granted, but I have this gap where this doesn't exist. It would be really fucking nice if we could have been passed something that had Indian numbers on it so that I could just go ahead and use that information, because you can't just get somebody's Indian number. It's not how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to know it. So I'm like,
you need this. We're not going to give it to you. We're not going to make it easy for you to get. It would have been nice to have been passed
some birth and death certificates and shit like that. So, yeah. But no, I've stopped kind of, when the kids were younger, there was stuff that I was like, oh, I can't wait until I can give this to my daughter or whatever. And then I'd give it to my daughter and get destroyed. Like, I saved and here's the other thing, and this popped up in my memories on Facebook that it was hysterical, that I had to go buy a blonde Barbie for my daughter because all I had were Native American Barbies, and I'd save them because my child surely would be happier with Native American Barbie dolls and would identify more with them and have dark hair. Well, then I had a blonde. And I was like, so I had posted, here's some deep irony for you. I just had to go buy a normal blonde Barbie doll for my daughter, a blonde blue-eyed, because my daughter's, now her hair is darkened and her eyes are green now. But when she was little, I was like, you can't identify with these Barbies whatsoever, can you?
Speaking of Native American issues, everybody knows I watch Svengoolie fairly religiously. So last weekend, which will not be the last weekend by the time this comes out, a few weeks ago, the movie was The Car. It's a 1970s movie starring James Brolin. Huh? Oh, with a big, bushy porn stash. It was delightful. Oh my God. It was I loved it. Because a lot of times they show very old black and white horror movies. So first of all, it was nice to have something in color. And there's a scene where the sheriff has just been run over by this car. This car just comes roaring out of the desert.
Is this pre-Christine?
Yes, starts killing people. And I'm like, okay, it worked. The movie, as such, worked. But I was like, me being me, I'm like, I want to know why. I want to know where it came from. But anyway, so there's a scene where there was a witness to this car just kind of roaring down the street and running over the sheriff. And it's a much older Native American woman who only speaks her native language. And so one of the deputies is also Native American, and he's doing the interview and translating for the guy asking the questions. And what really struck me was nobody made a big fat fucking hairy deal out of it. It was just like, oh, look, it's Beulah. And so, hey, come over here and help me question Beulah. And it was just a matter of course.
Yeah.
This woman speaks her native language. I do not. Let me get someone who can. And I was like, wow, that was like 1975.
There's no weird...
And it was no big deal.
No, there is a weird chunk of movies where where I watch it and I'm like, there's a rainbow of people in this.
Yeah.
And at no point was it a problem in any way.
Yes.
No point was it exaggerated. When did they get past that? Like, when did they stop doing that? And suddenly it had to be a big deal.
I don't know.
That Yeah, it's really weird. Like in the 70s, nobody gave a shit about jack shit, I guess.
We need a film student.
They were like, look, it's just a human being. It isn't. Now, there are problematic movies from that time as well that I've watched. Definitely. Some with native actors, some without native actors, for example. But, I mean, we're talking about the wider array. But yes, like, I'm all, ooh. I tried to watch Grizzly too. Which is, what's his name? Jonathan Rhys Davies or something like that. He played, Sala in the Indiana Jones movies. Anyway, I adore him. And he is playing...
Oh, okay. I know I pulled up...
Yeah.
Went through the mental Rolodex. I now know who we're talking about.
Big voice man, but big personality. And he's playing like a native character in Grizzly 2. And it's... I think I made it 15 minutes in and went, fuck this, I will hate this man by the time I finish this movie if I keep watching this, because this is kind of disgusting. So, and I feel like he thought he was, I don't feel like he thought he was mocking, but it was the whole mystical, what is it? It's the magical Negro and the mystical native, something like that. But yes, and I was like, oh. Nope, love you, and if I'm going to keep loving you, I need to move on right now.
Yes.
So I've not seen Grizzly 2.
So what are you going to talk about today?
So, I watched Joe Bob. And Joe Bob did a Japanese anime film. They were both animated films, actually, this time. Which I was concerned about, but I just did other stuff during, because, you want to see people get real mad? I didn't post. Somebody posted, I don't like animated films, and I've heard they kind of give you a hint the week ahead of time, and they tell you, they won't tell you what movies are coming up, but they'll give you hints. And they did say they're both animated. One was stop action, and one was a pure cartoon, right? And people were like, I'm worried because I can't sit through cartoons. I cannot either. I can't read graphic novels. I can't read comic books. I think that personally, I don't engage if there's not an actual human on the screen, is my theory. I don't know about the books, what it is, but and of course, I loved Disney movies. I watched all these things. I've reached a point where I'm like, I don't want to watch cartoons anymore. But I'd already watched Perfect Blue with Savannah because she really, really desperately wanted to see it. And then once she saw it, it's now one of her favorite movies and she loves it. So I actually got to call her up and she sat and watched the second part of Joe Bob with me for Perfect Blue. But anyway, it's an anime film that's, kind of horror, right? He doesn't necessarily always do horror. And not everything on Shudder is technically horror. It has horror elements, right? But it's this girl that's in one of those bands. Oh. And she leaves it and she goes to pursue acting and shit goes very, very wrong for her. And she's being stalked and this stuff, right? Very intense. People are being murdered. And Joe Bob was like, yeah, this is the story of Selina, the murder of Selina. Oh. And I don't want to give it anything fully away, but as somebody in her contingent, her cohort, whatever, who ends up being a problem, right? In this movie. And I was like, what? And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do Selina's murder for the podcast. But I was like, epiphany. Holy shit, Joe Bob. So, and I meant to look up for sure how to say this because I don't know. But Selina, I don't know if it's Quintanilla or Quintanilla Perez, was known by some as the Mexican Madonna and the Queen of Tejano music. Born in 1971 in Lake Jackson, Texas, her father, Abraham, who had been a musician in his younger years, decided that Selina had, quote, perfect timing and pitch. And he pulled her from school in 8th grade to headline the band Selina y los Dinos, in which her brother played bass and her sister played drums. Selina had been performing since she was about 9. The Texas oil bust of 1982 destroyed the Mexican restaurant the family owned. It really financially hit a lot of people in Texas, even if they weren't in the oil industry. That, of course, is going to have repercussions because it was so prevalent, right? And this caused them to be evicted from their home. So the family moved to Corpus Christi and they joined an indie record company, releasing their first record in 1984. The music was Tejano, popularized among Mexican Americans like the Quintanilla family and other Latinos in Texas. A lot of it was sung in Spanish.
Makes sense.
But it was this kind of bridging the gap sort of thing. And Selina actually didn't really speak Spanish, but she learned Spanish to be able to do this. She worked really hard. Her father tutored her on how to do pronunciation and all of that. And in 1987, Selina won Female Vocalist of the Year via the Tejano Music Awards, because she was the lead singer in their band. Obviously, her name is on it. This garnered her a major record deal and shot her into the national spotlight. In 1991, Yolanda Saldivar became a fan. Unable to find souvenirs following a concert in San Antonio, she contacted Abraham, Selina's dad, multiple times. He said she called like 15 times, and he finally took her call. She was like, I only called twice. I believe actually absolutely jack shit that she says. Okay. For the record, and people will find out why. She wanted to start an official fan club. So he said, okay, he met with her in person and he liked her idea and he gave her the go-ahead to make an official, family-sanctioned fan club for Selina. The club collected dues of $22 a year and members got goodies such as a t-shirt and a fact sheet and stuff like that for that $22. And within a few months, Yolanda and Selina met in person and became close friends. Selina hadn't met her when it first started.
How old was the woman?
So Yolanda was 11 years older than Selina.
Okay.
And in 1994, the club reached 8,000 fans. By the way, like her pictures, when I read she was only 11 years older and how old she was when all this went down, I was like, nuh-uh. Didn't photograph well. In 1994, the club reached 8,000 fans. Proceeds were supposed to be donated to charities. That was the deal. Mm-hmm. This money would come in, pay off costs, and any profit, right, would go to charities. There were various souvenirs people could purchase because that was what started this, right? Is she went to all these places because she went with her niece and she actually didn't even like Selina to begin with because Selina was taking away awards from Tejano artists she already liked. But then she goes with her niece to this and she was like, oh my God, I love it. So Yolanda quit her job as an RN in order to run the club full time. And it does appear she collected a small salary for it as well. Then in 1994, Selina opened boutiques in Corpus Christi and San Antonio called Selina Etc. The boutiques included salons in the actual boutique, and then you could buy clothing and jewelry there. So you could basically get like this whole makeover by going to these boutiques. Yolanda was put in charge of those as a manager and had full financial power in both those and the fan club. So she's basically running all this financial stuff. Mm-hmm. She's not running, say, money income from concerts and albums, but these other things on the side, yes.
It sounds like they were probably fairly lucrative.
Yes, and they trusted her very much and gave her a lot of leeway, and they gave her an American Express for her business-related purchases so she could have that on hand, and you do need to have that. Mm-hmm. A lot of them won't take anything else for payment. When Selina was around, Yolanda was extremely nice. She was said to be a bit obsessed with the young performer and would do anything Selina said. Somebody said if Selina said, their quote, if Selina said jump, she would jump 3 times.
Wow.
When Selina wasn't there, though, Yolanda was awful to the employees, including the fashion designer that had been brought in. Aside from mistreatment, he was certain Yolanda was destroying some of his creations. He'd come in and his outfits would be destroyed. Stuff he'd put together. He ultimately quit after confiding in Selina that he was afraid of Yolanda, only to have nothing done about her. Selina was like, no, I don't believe you.
Oh.
Because they were good friends. Yolanda had a habit of firing anybody she didn't like, but first she'd like to play mind games, and she would still play mind games with the remaining employees, and she was just terrible. Yolanda also started abusing the credit card she'd been given. She was known to take out people to expensive restaurants, rent town cars to get places, and just buy other unnecessary items for herself. Said she bought herself 2 cell phones with it. It's like she needed, why do you need 2?
Yeah.
And was paying for them with that, all this stuff. So she's using this for her own gain. In less than a year, the businesses were suffering. Employees who couldn't get anywhere by speaking to Selina because she defended her each time and wouldn't listen started going to her father instead. Abraham had a conversation with Selina saying it sounded like Yolanda might be dangerous, but Selina didn't believe him. She was like, she would never hurt me. Mm-hmm. She wouldn't do something to hurt me or cause me harm. In 1995, with goals of expansion into Mexico, it was Monterrey. When they said Monterrey, I thought California because I have a familiarity. We knew people in Monterrey. No, Monterrey, Mexico. Selina's cousin was brought in to help. Quickly, she ran up against Yolanda. who didn't like that Selina had brought anybody big who Selina brought in a big business way who was meant to do something. Yolanda was instantly at odds with them. She was also very possessive. And so she, like that designer, for example, she wouldn't let him talk to Selina. She's like, oh, I'll pass her messages. You can't talk to her. So there's a lot of this weird gatekeeping by her. But this cousin discovered that the books were off. There were no records of sales, or they weren't accurate. Receipts were missing, various paperwork. It was a mess. It looked like Yolanda wasn't paying the bills either. And the employees said, oh yeah, we see him come in, and then we see him come in with the past due sticker. You know, you get that red envelope or whatever.
Oh, been there.
Yeah, the issues with Yolanda reached a head in 1995 when fans started complaining that they'd paid for souvenirs that they'd never received. So they're making their orders. They're paying their money. They're not getting anything. The bills at the boutiques weren't being paid for sure now, they knew. And when Abraham looked into it all, he ascertained that Yolanda had so far embezzled over $60,000 from the club and boutiques. While this was going on, Selina was continuing to tour for her album, Amor Prohibido, which is Forbidden Love, and drew over 60,000 people to a show in the Houston Astrodome on February 26, 1995. She was the biggest draw at that. It was like a fair type of thing. She attended the Grammys, having been nominated, but didn't win in 95. She had won a Grammy the previous year for Best Mexican American Album for her album Selena Live. March 9th, there was a category for Best Mexican. I don't know, actually, the Grammys. I didn't know that they...
I didn't know that either.
Did they have, like, this breakdown in various places? Or was it because Tejano was becoming big? I don't know that. March 9th, 1995, a meeting was held with Yolanda, Selina, Abraham, and Suzette, who was the sister. And Suzette was running Q Productions, which was their production company.
Sister or cousin?
Sister. Cousin is gone. She's gone back to Mexico. She has said, fuck this shit.
Okay.
It didn't say that, though. But yeah, so Selina's sister.
Okay.
Ran basically, because her siblings had been in the kind of these backup, they also became business people for the family, and each was in charge of something.
Okay.
So Suzette was there because Q Productions, that is also what they filtered the fan club business through. She actually reported to Suzette. Basically, Yolanda did.
Okay.
So they all have this meeting, and Abraham, it seems like, kind of ran it, and he confronted Yolanda with proof of the missing money. And part of it, he said she just stared at him, like blinking, and wouldn't talk. And then part of it, she gave these really nonsensical bullshit answers. So, for example, she'd open an account for the fan club under her sister's name, but couldn't give a reason for this. And then she was like, well, because I couldn't open the account under my name. And he's like, why? And she's like, well, I don't know. They wouldn't let me. Okay. But she was signing checks in her sister's name, but they were clearly in her writing.
Oh, that's
she was writing those checks to like herself. And so she had a whole thing that she'd set up there. So she couldn't explain it. She claimed the fans hadn't paid and were trying to get something for free, and that's why they were contacting Abraham. Yolanda insisted she could prove that she hadn't stolen any of the money. I have documents to prove it. And when Abraham told her he would be bringing the police if she didn't produce that proof, she got up and walked out. Abraham told Selina not to talk to her anymore. Actually, he forbid her in that dowdy way. And I was like, you dumb shit.
Yep.
Selina's 23. That's still teenager enough that you forbidding her isn't going to do a damn thing but send her there more. And Selina wanted to give Yolanda another chance. She felt, you know what, we can make this right. We can sort this out. In addition, Yolanda had important financial documents in her possession and a key to Selina's home because she'd been so trusted by the family before that Selina was like, I need to still keep her safe or close and stay in communication with her because I need to get this stuff back from her too. And so he's wanting to fire her, and Selina's like, we need to wait until I can get this stuff, right? March 10th. Things are going to start speeding up now. So now I'm going to start giving you these dates. But this is 1995. March 10th. The meeting was March 9th. Selina replaced Yolanda with a new fan club president and took her off the boutique bank account. So she wasn't completely foolish and trusting. I mean, she understood that she was more trusting than she should have been, but she was 23 years old and maybe she'd never been wronged by somebody like this before, right? You don't want to believe your friend who you're very close to. Yeah. March 11th, Yolanda purchased a .38 snub-nose revolver and hollow point bullets. Hollow point bullets, for those who aren't aware at this point, are supposed to cause more damage. She intentionally purchased bullets that would do damage. Yolanda then scheduled a meeting with Selina, changing the location at the last minute to a parking lot outside of Corpus Christi. Selina told Yolanda that she could stay in charge of her Mexican business interests. She showed up and she's like, you know what, why don't you stay in charge of the Mexican business interests and the boutique spreading, like into Mexico. So Selina's family says she was, at this point, still just trying to keep Yolanda calm and keep her involved in some way until she could get her documents that she needed for taxes and stuff like that, and until she could find a good replacement for her. They also feel Yolanda had intended to kill Selina at this point, and she changed the location. She did it in an isolated parking lot with some lame excuse. She had the gun. I guess she showed the gun to Selina at this point, and Selina was like, you should take that back.
Oh, God.
Yeah. March 15th, Yolanda returned the gun. She really did. She went on a trip to Tennessee with Selina, and while there, Selina asked, hey, when we get back, can you get that paperwork to me? March 27th, Yolanda went back and bought the gun again, inviting Selina to a meeting at a hotel. She wanted her to come alone. Well, Selina did, but fortunately for her, she got mobbed by a bunch of fans who happened to find out she was there. They surrounded her, so she wasn't able to meet with Yolanda. And the family feels there were too many witnesses then to Selina being there and everything. So things get weird. She has a new plan, Yolanda does. Selina had a new partner, and this is a person Yolanda was very clearly jealous of, was at odds with. And this new partner received an odd series of phone calls from Yolanda where she claimed she had been raped while she was down in Monterey looking into the business interests. He sent someone to help her because he said at one point it sounded like she called me again and she's telling me, and it sounded like somebody was trying to get the phone away from her or something like that. So he sent someone over there. Well, she wasn't there. She wasn't where she claimed to be. Then Yolanda called Selina on the 30th and told her the same story and said, I need you to take me to the hospital and I need you to come, just you, because she's using me and she's kind of using this emotional leverage of the rape. Like, don't bring anybody with you because this is personal. But Selina's husband, Chris Perez, came with her. And he said, well, okay, I'm coming with, but I'll wait at the truck. With Chris there, Yolanda instead just gave Selina some of the records she was waiting on. But then on her way home, with Chris driving, Selina realized, well, this isn't what I asked for. Right? So she still hadn't given her the right thing. So this time when
she God, this sounds so much like an employer I had.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So this time, Yolanda told her she really needed to go to the hospital, that she was bleeding very heavily from the rape, and she needed Selina to come alone. Well, Chris talked her out of going back that night, because she's saying, come back. But then Selina secretly told Yolanda, I'll come tomorrow morning. And did not tell her husband, because he was so against her going to be alone with this woman.
Reasonably.
Yes. The other people in her life were not as trusting as Selina was. On March 31st, 1995, at 7:30 a.m., Selina left for Yolanda's hotel room. She took her to the hospital, but Yolanda's story kept changing when she was talking to the nurses. And, she was all, oh, well, I bled a little bit, but not anymore. And Selina was like, you told me that you were bleeding profusely from this. And the thing is, at that hospital, there was a whole thing. They couldn't treat her because she didn't live in that state. They couldn't do the investigation. They couldn't do the swabs and all that because this wasn't where she lived. She lived in a different city. And also it happened in Mexico, so nothing could be legally done because it was in Mexico. Okay, so basically they kind of turned her away after they talked to her to make sure she was physically okay.
Right.
And they didn't need to treat that. And the nurses said that they could see that Selina was getting frustrated with her when her story kept changing and that Selina was calling her on it, right? So she was keying in, finally, this woman is still fucking lying to me. So Selina took Yolanda back to her hotel room and they were in the room. People in other rooms heard them arguing, loudly, like yelling at each other. Selina had told people the night before that she intended to finally get that damn paperwork and to fire Yolanda and be done with it. At 11:48 a.m., a gunshot rang out from the room. Selina fled the room, blood pouring from her shoulder. She screamed for help, making it to the lobby. Yolanda ran after her, still holding the gun and pointing it at her, and at one point she called Selina a bitch while she was chasing her. This is important, and you'll see why. When they reached the lobby, Yolanda turned around and calmly walked back to her room. Because there were people, right? They're surrounded by people, so she just turns around and zips back to her room, acting like nothing happened. There in the lobby, Selina collapsed. She was bleeding so profusely that she left behind a 392-foot swath of blood behind her, and her clothing was completely soaked from the shoulder down. Selina begged the staff to lock the door, saying she'll shoot me again. Her last words were, Yolanda Saldivar, room 158. Within 1 minute of the gunshot, Selina was unconscious.
Wow.
An ambulance wasn't far away. And multiple articles, I was like, but multiple articles said that ambulance arrived within 2 minutes. One said they got there at 1 minute and 55 seconds after the phone call. So it had to have been like right there. But she was rushed to the hospital, but she never regained consciousness. And they did get her heart beating faintly again and gave her blood transfusions, which she was a Jehovah's Witness. And her dad was like, you can't. And they did it anyway. But the bullet had severed the subclavian artery. This is why it was so fast and so much blood. She was just pumping blood out of that artery as she ran. And Selina was declared dead after about 50 minutes of working on her.
Oh my God.
The surgeon who was called in, when he got there, he was like, first of all, I wouldn't have intervened. She was clearly dead. When she got here, they said that she was actually like brain dead by the time she got there. And he said a millimeter in any direction away from where it hit would have spared her life.
And how, okay, this is horrific all the way around, but how much worse it is that she just went so fast for her family.
Yeah, because her husband didn't get to say goodbye to her. Nobody had to say goodbye to her in the hospital. They weren't even at the hospital. She was dead before they could get there.
That just sucks.
And the thing is, the bullet had shredded her chest.
Oh.
Again, it was hollow point. Her time of death was 1:05 p.m. That's when they declared it. She was really brain dead before that. Because of a public outcry and media demands, the autopsy was performed within a couple hours of her death.
Wow.
The bullet had entered her shoulder from behind, so she had turned to run after the gun was pulled, and she was shot in the back by this person she considered a friend, who she had given a lot to.
Yes.
Certainly this job had to have been easier than being an RN. And she was working with people who were, it sounded like she was maybe even a hospice nurse. She was going to people's homes with cancer and stuff like that. And so not a good job. These people gave her this. They gave her these salaries. They kept putting her in charge. She could have been very successful had she not been a fucking thief. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the bullet had exited her chest, which is why the chest was so shredded. But again, had it not severed that artery and just a millimeter, just dead on. It's like, so much of this made me think of Brandon Lee's death, how unnecessary that was, and how just a tiny small change would have made it not happen, you know? In the meantime, Yolanda tried to flee in her pickup truck, but a hotel employee had called police already, and an officer on scene was able to keep her from leaving. He blocked her in with his truck. She was in a pickup. He was in his truck blocked her. Yolanda stuck the gun to her head. Now, she had walked out with it wrapped in a towel, and it's thought that she had intended to go to Q Productions and kill Abraham and Suzette as well. That's the theory. But instead, she put the gun to her head and she threatened to kill herself. And she said, I can't believe I killed my best friend. So she did say that, by the way, within the cops' hearing. She ended up having a standoff with police that lasted over 9 hours. People compared it to the O.J. Simpson suicide Bronco run, right?
The white Bronco.
Yep. During the negotiations to get her out of the truck, Yolanda's story kept changing. After the she's a terrible liar. After the negotiator suggested the gun, they go like, well, we know the gun might have accidentally gone off. You know, they gotta do this stuff to earn that trust and be like, no, nothing's gonna happen. Everything's okay. And so she was like, oh yeah, absolutely. It was an accident. And that's what happened. And eventually, then she said, well, I was going to shoot myself. And it said that the negotiator kind of put this in there. Oh, well, maybe you were like meaning to just harm yourself and she saved you. Or she saved you with her back facing you. Douche. And she was like, yeah. And then Selina stopped me, but I'd already pulled the trigger until it went off. And yeah, that's a really weird position. I want everybody just try and imagine what position that would have to be in to shoot her through the back. But this person wasn't intelligent enough to know. You could tell where the entry and exit wound were. And then at one point, she got out to give herself up. I think they said it was like at the 6 or 7 hour point. And she was walking that way, but one officer had a shotgun trained on her, and she freaked out, turned around, ran back into her truck, and put the gun back to her head, and then they had another couple hours. And when she finally surrendered, they arrested her immediately, handcuffed her, and took her in to question her. Selina had such a loyal fan base that multiple newspapers and magazines sold out copies of issues dealing with Selina's death. There was a newspaper, they said, we never sell out. You don't sell out. That's once in every few decades, there's something big enough to sell out a newspaper. And People magazine sold out, and they said, this is also unheard of for us. We don't sell out. That's just not how the magazine industry works.
Right.
At first, fans thought her death was an awful April Fool's joke, but were quickly disabused of this. And that's also why I thought of Brandon Lee. I thought it was an April Fool's joke. It wasn't on April 1st, nor was her death, but it was right before, I think, or right after. And I was like, there's some weird trick they're playing on us, right? There's no way that he died while he was filming this movie. Yes, he did. And yes, she did. Radio stations played her music constantly, and her funeral had over 60,000 or 50,000 attendees.
Wow.
That I watched a video of them just streaming by, walking by the coffin in this never-ending line. And at one point, they ended up opening her coffin because people were claiming her body wasn't really in there. It was still a joke. See, they were like, no, we don't believe it. So her family said, that's it. We're done with this. We're opening the coffin. Mm-hmm. And she was like absolutely beautiful. Like whoever did her makeup did an amazing job on making her look not dead. I've dealt with dead people. You can tell. And so it was really astounding. I was astonished by that. But anyway, so they did that so that finally it would be, here is her body. Mm-hmm. Stop fighting this. Like the radio stations, when it got announced, people were calling in saying this isn't funny. And they're like, it's real. People just really wouldn't believe she was dead. Latinos expressed shock that the death of one of their own actually wasn't ignored like it usually was. They were like, this is crazy that this is such a big deal because nobody ever gives a shit. They said, when those of us close to the border die, nobody cares. Mm-hmm. Right? And so, but she was huge. It was amazing. People were at that hotel room. The manager had to actually switch all the room numbers around and remove 158, I think, because so many people were coming. And I'll actually post a picture. It got made into, they came and they left stuff at the door, and on it, it was, yep. And by the way, they did discover in Yolanda's home, she had a shrine to Selina. She had a full-size standee of her in her home. She had, it was just covered with pictures and souvenirs of Selina. I mean, she was crazy obsessed.
Yeah.
And then she walked around telling everybody, oh, she calls me mom. And I'm like, nobody else has said that. But, so anyway, very well attended. An album released after her death shot up the charts, proving to be her most successful album ever. It actually became the fastest selling album by a female in pop history, according to a Women's Health article. And also, according to them, she was only the third woman to sell more than 300,000 copies of an album in its first week, and she was the first Hispanic singer to have an album debut at #1 on the Billboard chart.
Wow.
Of course, she was dead, so it didn't matter anymore to her.
I, for some reason, thought she was younger when she died.
She was 23. Wow. Yolanda was 32.
I thought she was a teenager. I thought she was like 18.
Oh, no. She was married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nope, 23, which is still incredibly young, but not a teenager. The album Dreaming of You still sells well. That's the one that was released after her death and is still the best-selling Latin album, according to Billboard, in that same article to this day.
Wow.
The best-selling. Yolanda's trial was a quick one. She pled not guilty. She said it was an accidental shooting. It took the jury only 2 hours to convict her of murder. In November of 1995, Yolanda was sent to Gatesville Prison to serve a life sentence with a minimum of 30 years before the chance of parole, which means she's up for parole on March 30th, 2025. Creeping up on it. Because Mexican and Latino gangs have put a price on her head, she is kept in solitary confinement for her own protection. Her appeal, she shouldn't want to get out, is what I'm saying.
But if she wasn't crazy before she went in?
Right. She'll be batshit. Her appeals have all been rejected up to this point, but I'm saying when she gets out, if she gets out March 30th, 2025, I have to question how long she'll be around. Mm-hmm. And it was even said that some of these gang members raised money because they were going to pay her bail before she was before her trial to get her out so that they could exterminate her. Like, that's how.
Wow.
And of course, there's so many gang members in prison. That's why she has to be in solitary. Like, they mean business. And so I'm all, go ahead and let her out. Let's see how it goes. Let's just check that out. In 1997, Jennifer Lopez was cast to play Selina in a film about her life and death. At first, it received criticism because Lopez was Puerto Rican. And they were like, it needs to be a Mexican performer. But her performance was actually so well done that the criticism was dropped, and it shot Lopez to stardom. Mm-hmm. She was not big before that. She did not have all that she has. She can thank Selina for that. Selina got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2017. George W. Bush proclaimed April 16th Selina Day in 1995. In the last article I read, there had been a bill introduced to make it an actual holiday. State observed. I'm like, come on.
Wow.
Stop. But Chris Perez has remarried, but he released a memoir about their relationship. Her family has released a MAC Cosmetics line in her name. In many ways, Selina lives on, and as much as I'd like to be a good person and leave that as that, I can't help but say she lives on, and her family's still profiting off of her.
Yeah.
Because I do have opinions about taking your daughter out of school and making her your income.
Yep.
But that's all I'll say about it. Sources: Wikipedia, Women's Health, Biography, and Esquire.
Wow. I feel like I've learned something today.
Oh, and now I looked at Wikipedia to find links and stuff.
Of course.
Too. Did I say? I might have said it first.
You said Wikipedia.
Okay, good. But yeah, it's so sad. And I think that always sticks with us when a celebrity who's super young dies, right? Mm-hmm. Because everybody thinks she would have blown up and become a huge superstar had she not been murdered. And she was trusting, so she was naive, but she was also savvy. And she was designing her own clothes in large part. That designer was only there for a time. And, she was making something of herself. And her entire family was employed.
Yeah.
Running this and working with her and traveling with her and all of that. So, yeah. And they went from pretty much poverty and being evicted and their business going under and to this. And then, bam, it was taken away from everybody.
You just never know about people.
Yeah.
Man, that sucks. So, this week, I'm going to talk a little bit about Bigfoot. I don't know why. I think it's because for some reason I thought of the sign when you're going up the Pikes Peak Highway, the Bigfoot crossing. I don't know. Who knows?
That got posted in I think maybe the Yellowstone group I'm in. Somebody was like, look at this. And they were like, is that real? And they're like, yeah, it's on the way up Pikes Peak.
Yes.
And now people are all excited and want to go see it. And that was funny.
It's just
to observe because I've seen it multiple times, right? But I do love it.
So Bigfoot's a big topic. So I'm not actually going to talk about the legend that is Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to I'll give the basic, because I'm pretty sure everybody in the audience has heard of Bigfoot. So Wikipedia defines Bigfoot as a large and hairy human-like mythical creature purported to inhabit forests in North America, particularly in the Pacific Northwest. Also, different states...
Very much believed in by the tribes in the areas.
Yes, and Bigfoot is separate from the idea of Wendigo.
Yeah, they're incredibly different things.
But some people use the terms, so I just want to put that out there.
Y'all know. That's some stupid shit.
Our listeners do, but not everyone does. So there's a lot of... So anyway, there are...
Sasquatch.
Yes. Different states have different names for essentially the same creatures. Such
skunk ape.
Skunk ape in the South. But do you know what they call them in Virginia?
What?
The wood booger. Yes, I'm 10 years old. I had to get the word booger in there. And wood ape. Skunk ape and wood ape. So Washington is the state where the most Bigfoot sightings have occurred. Colorado limps along behind at number 11.
Where's Oregon, number 2?
I didn't write down all the states.
I grew up knowing about.
So Sasquatch. Oklahoma clocks in at number 15. And Michigan comes in at number 8. That surprised me.
But just think about how wide the Sasquatch lore is compared to other lore. Wendigo,
Yes.
which I did ask somebody recently, and that person from their particular Cree group, it's actually Weedigo. And I had seen that pronunciation and that spelling when I was doing the research. So I'm just throwing that out there because I had to choose a pronunciation when I covered it. So anyway.
So the first Bigfoot crime I want to talk about happened just last year in July of 2022 in Oklahoma. I don't look for Oklahoma to be a big place where Bigfoot crimes are taking place. But
it's a lot of backwoods.
That there is. Larry Doyle Sanders, age 53, and his friend Jimmy Glenn Knighton, age 52, had gone noodling together in the South Canadian River, approximately 85 miles southeast of Oklahoma City. Noodling, because I did not know what this was, is catching a catfish with your bare hands. Mm-hmm. I was like, that's a thing?
I have heard it. And then I have forgotten it.
There you go. And a side note, Sanders' daughter was dating Knighton's son at the time. There didn't seem to be any beef, but that just...
It wasn't the Capulets and the Montagues.
No. While the two were out in a remote area, Knighton told Sanders he was going to feed Sanders to the Bigfoot. Knighton said he was going to leave Sanders there alone to be eaten. Now, I've not heard that's you don't associate Bigfoot with eating people, but when Knighton tried to leave, the two men fought. Sanders attacked him when he tried to leave. Terrified, Sanders fought with his friend for an extended period of time. He said for an hour.
Wow.
Rolling on the ground, punching him, hitting him with a stick before finally choking him to death. So when Sanders returned home, he was frantic and in a panic, babbling a story to his daughter about Knighton trying to feed him to Bigfoot. Sanders said he'd had to kill Knighton to prevent him from feeding Sanders to Bigfoot. The daughter, whose age I looked and looked and looked, I could not find it, told her mother, who immediately called I can't pronounce this county, Pontotoc, Pontotoc. Okay. County deputies. When they arrived at Sanders' residence to question him, he kind of confessed. And there were people from both of their families there. So the deputy believed that Sanders was under the influence of illegal drugs since he couldn't stand still and he had a hard time telling the officer what happened in a coherent fashion. He did eventually say that someone was dead and that he had killed him. So at that point, the officers stopped questioning him and took him in. They didn't actually take him in for that. Another witness said that Sanders had returned from the noodling trip driving Knighton's vehicle. And Sanders was actually arrested because he had an outstanding warrant. So they took him into custody and took him to jail where he continued to confess. He never denied it. He had previously been arrested, this is what the warrant was for bringing meth into the county jail after being arrested for public intoxication. He did provide authorities with a map of where he had hidden the body, which was recovered the next day. And he has been charged with first-degree murder, but the case has not gone to trial yet. He did not, in anything I could find, he did not challenge the charges. He's not saying, no, he didn't do it. And I mean, like I said, he came back to the house. But I'm just like, I can't imagine the guy who was killed, Knighton, what he must have been thinking. I'm assuming he just thought he was joshing the guy. He was just making a big joke. And now now he died. That's bad enough. But the second Bigfoot case is worse. And again, it is just exactly as related to the creature Bigfoot as the first one. The Bigfoot Killer is the name given to an unidentified serial killer who raped and murdered 7 girls and women in the Cass Corridor neighborhood in Detroit. That's why I mentioned Michigan earlier. And Oklahoma because of the last one. You've never... have you ever heard about this one?
Vaguely.
Because Thing 2, who's my sounding board for a lot of this, had not. And I was like, well, there's a reason. It was a very poor neighborhood. It was not a big neighborhood. It was a small neighborhood. It was a poor neighborhood. And the victims, who ranged in age from 16 to 22, were all sex workers. Of the seven women he killed, 5 were black and 2 were white. Unfortunately, that does make a difference in how crimes are reported and which crimes get media attention.
All of it, the sex worker part, the
yes.
race part, yeah.
So, and this happened in the 70s, but it's just as valid today. So, in early 1975, the man committed at least 4 rapes where the victims actually went to the police and described their attacker. A facial composite was created, which I finally tracked down. Fuck, it was so hard to track down. He was described as a tall, at least 6'3", muscular black man with facial hair and an afro, between 30 and 35 years of age. That part threw me. How they narrowed the age down that much.
Probably by the women's
but I'm like...
guesses.
Yeah, it had to be.
Unless the FBI came in.
Yeah. So police suspected he might suffer from acromegaly, since witnesses and other evidence indicated he had very large hands and feet. So acromegaly is excess growth in certain parts of the human body after the growth plates have closed, typically seen in hands and feet. But this led to the nickname Bigfoot. Because it happened in the Cass Corridor neighborhood, he was also sometimes called the Cass Ripper, but mostly he was referred to as the Bigfoot Killer. Also, as a quick aside, this was in early 1975, but in April of 1974, there were 89 homicides in Detroit. That's a lot for 1 month.
Yeah.
So the neighborhood and the city overall were not doing well. Between February 16th and October 20th, he killed 7 women. Witnesses reported the killer had driven a brown or beige Oldsmobile and would offer $15 in exchange for sexual services. He targeted women who worked the streets instead of those who worked out of bars. Women who got in the car with him were driven to an alley, threatened with a knife, beaten, raped, sodomized, and strangled. So, once this started going on, the community did not sit quietly. Toward the end of 1975, there was a large rally in front of the police station, and authorities were accused of ignoring the murders because of who the women were, because of who the victims were. The protesters, as evidence, the police had produced, it was one place it was described as a flyer, another place it was described as a leaflet. It described the killer's appearance, had the composite, had a phone number to call. Guess what? The number wasn't staffed at night. So you've got...
When it's happening?
A, when it's happening, and B, you've got a poor neighborhood where everybody's working probably more than one job.
Yeah.
So yeah, they didn't staff it at night when most people would have used it. It was said that the police jeered at the prostitutes who were protesting. However, they did arrest several young men who attempted to solicit the women while they were protesting. Police claimed that the women weren't cooperating with their investigation. And I'm like, I don't know what it would have taken in 1975 for 4 prostitutes to go to the police to make the complaint that they had been raped.
Right. That's already a huge deal because you're risking getting arrested when you go in to report a crime. And also there is zero trust between the people in the in that line of work. And honestly, people in that general area, probably people of that financial level will say, and the police.
Yeah.
So.
And there were all kinds of articles and, women started carrying switchblades. Women had family members sit at the bar with them to look out for them. So in January of 1976, a man named Carl Mayweather Jr. was arrested during the attempted rape of a woman. He was caught in the act. There was no guessing about this. His family was well off, and he held a high position in one of his father's companies. Carl matched the description and had previously been arrested for assaulting a woman, but had received a suspended sentence. Because, they were a good family.
Mm.
Carl Mayweather was 6'6" and wore size 14 shoes. Those are some big feet. When they searched his house, they found 669 pairs of women's underwear, a machete.
Wow.
I know, right? That's just mind-boggling. Dozens of knives, a stack of obscene Polaroids, and bags of women's jewelry. He eventually, I want to throw up just saying this. He eventually confessed to raping, the quote was, about a woman a week for the past 4 years. However,
the numbers, that's a lot of shit that he's collected.
Yes.
So
police established that Mayweather had airtight alibis for 4 of the murders, so he was dropped as a suspect.
Bullshit.
Mm-hmm. He was convicted of the rape he was caught committing and sentenced to 40 to 60 years in a mental health institution, with the remainder to be spent in jail if he was ever declared sane.
Okay. That's actually surprising to me for one rape.
Yeah. But
in the 70s?
It was just, there was so much.
No, I know.
But, yeah.
I'm just saying in the 70s, they were like, oh, you raped a woman? Good for you.
Yeah.
Here's a week in prison. So I'm surprised.
Yes.
I like that he got that much. I am surprised that he did.
So here's another weird note about this case. It was really hard. I had to look long and hard to find the victims' names.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it wasn't... Because you find, when you're researching something like this, the first thing you find, the first layer, are a lot of composite articles.
Yeah.
Every fucking radio station, and there was a little blurb, and I don't know who originally wrote it, on like the 25th anniversary maybe of this. So everybody ran the exact same story about how this killer had never been caught. So I did finally find the victims. Valinda Brown was killed on February 16th, 1975. She was strangled and found in an abandoned house. Julie Brown was 16 years old, killed April 24th, 1975. She died of strangulation. Regina Foshi, 19 years old, May 1st, 1975. She was strangled, was found in the kitchen of a vacant home. Naomi Hall was 22. She was killed on May 3rd. So that's just 2 days after.
Mm-hmm.
She was beaten to death, and she was found in a motel that I believe she was living with under an assumed name. Eoria Dick was 22 years old, June 13th. She was stabbed to death, found in a warehouse, but lived at the same motel as the last woman. Andrea Coxton was 22 years old, July 13th. She was strangled. She was found in an abandoned restaurant, and she was one that was not a prostitute. And the last one, Dorothy Holmes, who was 43 years old, October 19th, she was also strangled, was also not a prostitute. So while the search for the Bigfoot killer was going on, just to kind of set this in history, the hunt for Jimmy Hoffa was in the headlines. So that was taking up a lot of space. It was taking up a lot of attention. Not saying that's right, but that's what eclipsed these killings in the news. But to this day, the killings are unsolved. They have no more idea now who did it than they did
It sounds
then.
like it was Carl Mayweather Jr.
It very much does sound that way.
How many people were running around with giant hands
With giant
and feet?
But I don't know. I could not find the details on what his alibi was.
If you're rich, you can buy an alibi.
You could buy an alibi, but I like that he only could buy it for 4 of them.
Yeah.
Couldn't buy it for all of them. My sources were Wikipedia, KDVR News, NBC News, the Ada News, that's a town spelled ADA, the Oklahoman, CBS News, the Hudson Valley Country News, the Serial Killer Database, and the YouTube documentary was by Ruin Road. I didn't get the guy's name. He did I'm like, God damn, this guy does good work, because he had a lot of footage from Detroit from the time when this happened. So he had a lot of the streets, old footage showing what the streets would have looked like then, and then he would show what they look like now. This is not a poor neighborhood anymore. Yeah, this was a really well put together, and I'm like, and it's on YouTube.
Has it been gentrified?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So I thought when I started this, I was like, I'm going to look for some fun Bigfoot crime. I did not find fun Bigfoot crime. I may look again in the future. I'm like, this is fucking depressing. This guy goes fucking fishing, ends up dead because the guy he went with was unable to take a joke. And then the other guy is labeled the Bigfoot killer and got away with killing at least 7 women.
Wow.
So, but I'm
good
bummed.
Times.
Yeah. Here's your upbeat story for today.
We didn't have any upbeat stories today.
We did
or
not.
last week, for that matter.
Oh.
Sorry. It is a true crime podcast.
That is true. It's mysteries, monsters,
I'm not that
and
sorry.
mayhem. I did. When I started out, I was like, I thought my mayhem stories or my Bigfoot stories would just be mayhem, but they are not. I did read, and I obviously didn't include it. If you ever want to look up the Bigfoot stories about who did what, who carved the wooden feet and left the footprints, all that stuff, just look at Wikipedia. It's all there, but that wasn't germane to either of these stories.
Yeah.
But the number of people who carve those wooden feet and then hide them in their attic or their basement, and they're outed years later, usually after their death. Look what we found.
Giant Bigfoot feet.
I'm like, okay.
It's just like all the ones that we've done. It seems like primarily on the East Coast, they were ones that had like hooves or whatever, right?
Yes.
And then they were like, then the hooves were showing up outside. They went Jersey Devil.
Yes.
And another one I did. Anyway, just always. And I'm like, I wonder if they ever found. All you have to do probably is horse dies, keep the part of their hooves.
Someone we know in common wrote a story about, it was about a murder. It was a murder mystery. And I'm trying to remember what the prints were that were left. I can't remember if they were bear prints or bobcat prints, some kind of animal prints to convince the other campers that this person had been killed by a wild animal. And the person who wrote it, well, I can say her name. I'm not saying anything bad. It was Beth Groundwater. Mm-hmm. I just wasn't sure if she'd actually published this book or not, because I was in a critique group with her. Anyway, I don't know the story, but she had read a real story where somebody had taken the preserved paws of an animal. I don't know if they got it from a taxidermist or what, but took them on this camping trip to leave the prints. Jeez. That's a little, what's it called? Malice aforethought.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember. I read Beth's rafting mystery
and this
series.
was the one where they're rafting and there's a dead body like on the second day, so they have to keep the body chilled and
in the water or something.
In the water, yeah.
Okay. I think it did get published.
We, as a critique group, we gave her a massively hard time for that.
What, the body?
Yeah, because and understand, I'm talking about a first draft or a second draft. Knowing Beth, she was a meticulous writer, so it may not have been the first draft. But it was very early in her process. We're like, no. We're just giving you our feedback based on us, but these people are not freaking out about the fact that they have to canoe out with a fucking dead body attached to their boat, to their raft. We're like, no, they need to have a bigger reaction.
Yeah.
So, and she did make the change, but because we were just like, oh, hell no.
Well, and those weren't indie published, so
and
they would have gone through an editor too.
I will say, because you know Beth, and you know she's meticulous, she had researched it, and she's like, no, he couldn't do X. Like, well, why couldn't somebody just hike back out? Because they'd been dropped off at the spot. So even if he hiked to the top of the cliff, there was nobody there.
Yeah.
So she had thought this all out, and we were like, you're twisty sometimes.
That's the thing about mystery writers. They don't get the weird looks that we horror authors do, but guess what?
They write just as twisty.
Just as twisted. Theirs just focuses maybe more on people than horror normally does. All right. Except I think that I hit that. It's the people thing all the time. But Thanks for listening.
Yes.
And hey, we're finishing right before the thunderstorm, apparently. So that's probably a good thing.
Yes.
Because they've been loud.
And awful.
I'm over them.
Yes, thank you for listening.
Bye.
Check us out on
buymeacoffee.com/mayhem. Just support us.
We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Boy. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.